Hi, I'm Clark on Temptress. Today we're going to talk about, can I mix different types of lithium together? You might find yourself in the possession of different ages, different manufacturers. Can you mix them? The answer is sometimes yes, sometimes hell no. So you might find yourself in possession or wanting to buy a different kind of lithium than you already have. You might find a really good deal on something. You might have a battery that you've had for a few years on your boat and now you want to add more even of the same thing. So now it's a different age. Can you mix it? Well, this week alone I've had this question 3 times and it's a very valid question. And it's a very complex and interesting question. And we're going to dive into it today. We're going to talk about the theory of it, and we're going to set up a lab, and we're going to actually see with this model why we can't, when we can't. We're going to be able to know when we can do it. And by the end of the video, I'm going to give you a workaround such that you can mix anything with anything. Sad news, spoiler alert, it costs money. If you were to ask a battery producer, can I mix your product with somebody else's? They're going to say no, of course. And, you know, our suspicion is they want to sell their own batteries. Well, if you've watched my videos, you know me. I'm cheap. And I'm not going to tell you can't do something that is economically more feasible unless there's a real physics reason why you can't do it. So today we're going to go down that path. So, general rules of batteries. If you're putting batteries in series, we're not going to talk about that today, you can mix any voltage you want, but they all have to be the same amp hour. General theory of parallel is you can mix different amp hour batteries as long as they're all of the same nominal voltage. That's a general rule. And lead follows the general rule. So let's just talk about lead. If you have some really old sick lead and you try to mix it with brand new lead, you may have already tried this. I mean, everybody kind of does because you just want some more battery and you put it together. Well, it all has to do with where the lead floats if left on its own. And the brand new lead, fully charged, will float itself, it's called the rest voltage of the lead, at 12.8 volts. For this discussion, everything's going to be based on 12-volt batteries. If you've got bigger batteries in your system, just multiply everything I say by 2 or 4, and it's the same. So that new lead wants to be 12.8 when it's sitting there, and your old lead might want to be 12.6 because things have happened inside there. And if you hook them together, you're constantly losing power out of your new batteries into your old batteries. But that's for sick batteries. Let's say you have 2 kinds of lead batteries that are both of the same health level, and you put them together, but they're different kinds of batteries. You'll find that works pretty well. There's a problem when you charge them because they have different charge acceptance rates, but lead is lead. It actually thrives on being slightly overcharged. So you charge them and one charges a little faster, and then when you get to where that one kind of should stop, this one can keep charging and this one just gets equalized a little bit. Lead has the inherent ability of losing extra energy that's given to it, either by making heat in the battery, you'll notice they warm up when you charge them hard, or by converting some of its water into hydrogen and oxygen. And even the sealed batteries do this, and they have a catalytic way of recombining, and as long as you don't go crazy, that's okay. It's a way of getting rid of that energy. Lithium doesn't have such a way. You should never overcharge lithium. Lead does this thing with voltage where it wants to rest at this voltage at this percent of charge. And if you put some power in it, then it wants to rest at a little higher voltage on up. It's kind of linear. That's why your old lead system could have a very cheap instrument that would say 50% state of charge. Yeah, it was based on after you let it float for a while, but rest for a while. But it could be done. Lithium, the voltage curve, percent of charge and voltage is kind of like this double hockey stick thing. It's surprisingly flat in the middle. That's actually the reason, one of the main reasons why they're so efficient. But it makes doing anything based on voltage with these batteries very difficult. Also, if you took a 20% or 30% state of charge battery and you compared it to a 90% state of charge battery and you just check their voltage, they would have essentially the same voltage. And that means if you just put them in parallel, the current wouldn't even flow between them to equalize. They just sit there at their different state of voltage for all purposes. All of these things make it hard to get a string of parallel lithium batteries to balance themselves. So let's talk about the theory of lithium. If we had two batteries that charged at a different rate, and we charged them up to full of the first battery and stopped right there, well, the lesser charging battery, the slower battery, would be at a different percent of charge. And that would kind of be okay. You would just be wasting its capacity, and then they would discharge and they would recharge. If you charge them on some kind of an average, you would find that you're overcharging the quicker charging battery, and that would be bad. And if you charge them to some kind of voltage number, you would really find it's bad, because then you'd really be pushing the high one too far. Well, what I've assembled for us on the table today are a couple of the batteries that I've done reviews on, and they're on the boat, you know, kind of in the way, waiting for homes. This one is the Redodo Mini, and if you went back to the review of this one, what would be interesting for this discussion is this guy did particularly well when I took 100 amps out of it, holding its voltage up nice and high. This kind of tells us that this guy's internal resistance on the way out is very low, and it can supply power without its voltage dipping. Well, if it's good in one direction, it's probably good in the other direction, because a lot of those reasons have to do with bus bars, the BMS, and they're balanced in both directions. And quite honestly, low resistance cells are low resistance cells. This battery is the fence. This is like the lowest one on our ranking. It's the cheapest one by far. If you just need a little bit of power, it would work for you fine. But if you remember, its bus bars were itty bitty. I reviewed it before I had my thermal camera, but I put a little thermometer on it and I could see it was getting hot. When we discharged it strongly, its voltage went right down. It's exactly the opposite. I have chosen the lowest resistance, easiest to accept power battery, and essentially the worst in that way to put together, so we can see the difference in our test. But even if the batteries were really close and there was a difference, the same effect would happen, but just not to the extent. And I want to be able to measure it easy and show it. Also, I want to say, this battery isn't the same resistance as this battery. It doesn't charge as fast as this battery. That's really only a relative thing. If this battery met your mission, this is a good battery. It's got good cells. It does its thing. Remember, we don't have to have the best. We have to have enough. We don't all have to go to get groceries in a Lamborghini. We just need something that can get us up to highway speed, and that's all we need. So don't get hung up on having the best. Get hung up on having what's adequate for your particular needs. So again, I'm not dissing this battery. I'm just trying to show two that are very different. A bank of these charges off solar, you wouldn't know the difference at all. But the two together, they kind of outrace each other. And this guy kind of steals power from this guy is what basically happens. Anyway, enough of that. Let's take a look at how we would charge these. Now, these two batteries have spent the last 24 hours sitting on this table connected with big cables. They've discharged into each other as far as they can. I'll tell you that when I hooked them together, this guy was basically discharged and this guy was fairly full. So the power went this way at first. It started out traveling from here to here at 30 amps, and then it went down and down and down. I can take a quick peek now. I got my multimeter here. Let me set it for amps. So I've got it zeroed. It's reading 0 amps now. And if I put it around the cable, I see 0.02 amps. So even after 24 hours, they're still kind of equalizing themselves. But it's such a slow rate, it would just take forever. Before we do our tests, let's figure out what the initial voltage is. That's just always interesting. They've been hooked with these big cables. It's the same for both of them. And what is it? I see 13.13. Yeah, it averages 13.13. So, you know, they're charged, but not really super highly charged. 13.2 at rest would be high charge. So they've got some room to put some power into it. We're going to do that now. Got my handy dandy power supply on the wall that I use for everything, and I'm going to hook it up. Now, this is kind of important, and this would be important for any set of batteries you hook together in parallel. Lead, lithium, doesn't matter. You want them all exposed to exactly the same world, or as much as possible. And if you hook them all together with the biggest cable or bus bars or whatever you can, the most copper and the shortest copper between each one, and I've done these with somewhat long, somewhat small wire because it's what I had. This is a lab, this is not real. And you hooked the power to them. So if I hooked the wires up like this battery would be seeing this path of power in through the delivery wire, through the battery to absorb energy and back out. Remember, there's always a circuit. This battery is still getting some of that power, but it's going out through that wire to here and out through that wire to here. So this battery is seeing a slightly lower voltage. It's seeing the voltage drop caused by these two wires, and inherently that would be a problem. Even if these were identical batteries, this guy would charge faster than this guy. So what you do is this. You put the charge wires on one end and the other end. And if I had 3 batteries in this stack, I would have them all connected down to each other. I would have the ground on, say, battery 1, and I would have the positive on battery 3, 4, whatever. That's just the right way to do it. Now the path is in through here, through this battery, around this cable, and back to the charger for this battery. And for this battery, it's in through here, around that cable, through this battery, and then back. You see that how they all have kind of the same path. They have the whatever they have to start the process, plus one cable. Now this cable and this cable were pretty much identical. They would kind of see an identical world of charging. So keep that in your pocket anytime you ever hook up batteries in parallel. Use that to your advantage. It makes a big difference. Okay, so I'm going to put some power into these now. Turn my charger on. I've got it sending about 5 amps in. Let's take our meter, get these wires out of the way because we don't need it for this. Okay, so using the multimeter. Oh, and for all this, you're going to see negative and positive. That doesn't matter. That's just whether I hook it on this way or this way. So total coming into our system is really close to 4.95. And remember how the path thing works. The power is coming into here through this cable for this one, and into here through the battery and through this cable for this one. So if I measure this cable, I get the power that's going into this battery. And if I measure this cable, I will get only the power going into this battery. Isn't that convenient? So I take this one and I see 1.91 amps going into this battery. And over here, I see let me hold that better. I see 2.96 amps going into this battery. Well, that's huge. That's a wild difference. So this battery is charging way faster than this battery. That's not a world that these batteries want to live in. As I said, I started this out with this one having a little more initial charge. So as they charge up, this will even out, but this guy will eventually be wildly overcharged before this guy is charged up. So we can see from the lab, yes, you need to have your batteries be the same, able to take power at the same rate. That means in the universal, I want to be absolutely safe and I don't want to think about a thing, they have to be the same age, they have to be the same manufacturer, and the same type. Now, if you see 2 batteries and you know they came off the same production line and they're both new, but they have different stickers on them, the sticker doesn't matter. And I've done some reviews of some batteries that are essentially identical, so that doesn't matter. Age can be a big thing, and age can be an expensive thing. What we're going to learn from that is when you put in a battery system, think ahead. Kind of decide how many batteries you think you're going to want for a good long amount of time. This is not something where you say, well, I'm going to buy 100 amp hours and see how that goes, and I'll add another 200 later. By rights, you should throw away the first 100 and then add 200 more. We're all captains of our own ship. Sometimes we make decisions that aren't optimal, but they're perfectly good and they're cost effective for us. So don't necessarily follow every rule. I'm just trying to show you what the world is there. So we've learned the state of the world and the state of the theory and why we can't mix these. Now let's talk about how we get around that. There's two ways to get around that. One absolutely will work, and it will work for anything you possibly want to mix. The problem is it costs money. But this could be worth it. So if you had a whole bunch of batteries, lithium on your boat, and you're working great, and they're being charged by the bank manager, and you're happy as a clam, and then, but you say, hey, I got to keep my wife happy, and she wants a washer dryer, and we're going to need a lot of power to do that. And you put solar panels in, or generator, or whatever, and you want to add another big bank of lithium. Well, what you can do is buy a second bank manager. I know they're quite expensive, and having two of them sounds really expensive. And I'm sorry for that, and maybe if we ever become not a little boutique business and we start selling thousands of those, the price will come down. So maybe that would happen in your future when this comes up. But if you have one lithium bank under the command of one battery bank manager, and you have another lithium bank under a different bank manager, it looks at the batteries that are under its command. And it doesn't really matter if one bank of lithium charges faster than the other. The bank manager will say, my guys are done, click. And then the other one will go, and that'll say, my guys are done, click. And we'll have a good world for lithium. Jumping ahead, I don't know what's going to absolutely happen because none of us can ever talk about the future. But these very two batteries, as different as they are destined to go in the same boat. They're going to go in a friend's boat. And I'm going to give him two bank managers just so I can do a video actually showing this theory that I'm giving now. Let's say you want to, do the best you can without spending a bunch of money. And I don't officially recommend this. But if you accept all the caveats and you have a good understanding of it, one of the things you could do is hook up your bank manager to a parallel of two batteries. You have to figure out which guy is going to charge the fastest. In that case, it would be this one. You set it all up with the contactor where you'd put it, on the incoming positive line that goes off to the lead and all the charge sources. But you would move the current sensor from where it sees both batteries to where it only sees the current going in and out of the faster battery. And you would tell the bank manager the size of only the faster group of batteries. That way, the bank manager is going to do what's right for this guy. And if this guy is always the sidekick, if he's always behind the hero, he will never get overcharged. And that's the vital thing. Don't overcharge them. On the downside, he won't get fully charged, probably ever. You'll have all those issues. So you're not an optimal system, and you really don't know what's happening over here. But that is a thing that can work. What I'm kind of saying is, don't ask me specific questions about this later and how to set it up, because my official answer is don't do it that way. But if you're clever enough to kind of see what's happening under the covers, that is a way you could do that. Just last night, some friends in the Bay came by to go shopping amongst all our collection of batteries. We brought all these review batteries in, and my goal is to sell them to friends and other cruisers around the Bay. And they're coming in, and of course we got a little of this and a little of that, and they're shopping. It's like going to a big department store in a way. And they were thinking they really wanted this Redodo because it's so small. They have a very small wooden boat, not a lot of room. We talked about it a bit. And what we came up with is they could see in their future wanting 200 amp hours. And because of all the things we've talked about today, they realized that you really don't want to mix what you have. You don't want to mix ages. So it's to their advantage to buy the 200 amp hours right now. And also, it's better, you probably heard me say a lot of times, especially when I'm talking about the bigger battery cases. it's better to have all the cells under the command of the same BMS. The reason for that is all the cells are now in parallel, if you have multiple cells in the same box, multiple groups of cells in the same box, or they're bigger cells. But you're not going to let the cells kind of get out of whack with each other. In short, it's better to buy one 200 amp hour battery than two 100 amp hour batteries. It's not vitally, it's not like you can't do the smaller batteries as long as you get the cables connecting them good and big and you do everything right with the diagonal charge. It'll be fine, but it would always be just a little better if they were under one. So Jeff and Sunita have decided that they're not going to go with the smaller battery. They're going to take the plunge. They're going to, honestly, in their case, they're going to spend more on battery now and less on solar panel now to keep the budget kind of the same. So what can we learn from this for our own personal decisions? You're going to put an electrical system on your boat. If you're getting a boat ready for cruising, likely it has a perfectly decent engine, because when it was like racing around beer cans, it had an engine. It probably has good rigging, good sails, all that kind of stuff. General purpose boats have all that. What it probably doesn't have is that bulletproof power system that can run you with big fridges and all the stuff you're going to want while cruising. So typically, the biggest change you're making to that cruising boat right now is its power system, the most expensive change. So think about the money you're going to spend on that power system. What I'm suggesting is there's things that you can buy now and you should just buy what you need, and there's things that could grow over time if you needed them. And the batteries are a little more towards column A than column B. So you might want to, if you can't afford everything, you might want to buy enough battery and maybe not quite enough solar panels yet. Maybe not buy that arch yet, but just buy a couple panels you can put on the rail. Use the generator a bit, what you have to do. And then later on, when you get some more money, you could build your arch and then have your full system. That would essentially be better to do than a system where you've got all the generation possible, but you don't have enough battery and you're not charging fully every day, so you're having to use the generator again for a different reason. And then you're going to add more batteries later, because those batteries you add later will be of a different age. The solar panels, it really doesn't matter what age they are. So buy all the batteries you think you're going to need up front and grow the rest of the system as time goes on. Along those lines, we're going to do a couple other videos. Emily's going to do one on power budget. She's going to interview some people, and I think that's going to be really interesting. That's kind of like one of those questions you don't know how to answer until you've lived the life. So I think that'll be an interesting video. I know I'm looking forward to seeing that one. We're going to do a few along those thoughts to building my system up kind of videos. I get asked these questions a lot, and I would like to be able to just refer. As my collection of videos has gotten bigger, it has been easier and easier for me to answer questions in the comments, because I just grab a link to a video that answers the question and say, I made this video just for you. We're going to be doing some very important ones along those lines in the next few months. So if you've just bought a boat or you're setting up a boat for cruising and you really want to have answers to all these power questions, subscribe. That's all I can say. Subscribe, hit the silly little bell you have to hit so they know you're serious about subscribing, because in the next few months, we're going to be putting out content that's going to really be right up your alley. So thank you so much for watching our video, and bye from Tempters.